Hey, welcome back, folks. Great to see you on this Friday evening. Got an update for you on two snowstorms on the way. One this weekend into the Northeast. That includes potentially portions of the I-95 corridor where we could see pretty impressive totals. And then another snowstorm on the way next week. This one, I'll go ahead and say, has the potential to be record-breaking due to how far south it is going to get. And I'll tell you, folks, areas that really cannot handle winter weather could see some pretty significant levels of winter weather by the time we get into early next week. And all of that going to be rounded out by big-time cold for really just about the entire lower 48 as we go throughout the next 7 days or so. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. And if you haven't already, go ahead, like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. That'll keep you up to date with the latest model guidance and a breakdown of that guidance as we continue this very active pattern. And so far, so steady as we continue into 2025. Definitely been a very busy year to start out, and I imagine that trend will continue here as we continue on down the road. All right, folks, let's go ahead and dive on into that data and give you the latest and greatest information. Now, what you see looping next to me, this is the afternoon model run from our GFS American model, painting that picture for double trouble. One round in the Northeast and then another vigorous round of winter weather into the deep south. And I mean really deep, right along the Gulf Coast, potentially as far south as the state of Florida, seeing some winter weather impacts by early next week. That's in the cards, folks, as we continue to track this system. Now, I'll go ahead and kind of tease you a little bit here and show you this map. This is straight from the Weather Prediction Center, and this is their kind of preliminary early forecast for next Tuesday. So this is only about 4 days away from now, and you can see that forecast for snow for areas that really just don't see it very often, including Houston, in and around the New Orleans area, down into the western panhandle of Florida, Savannah, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, even up into the Outer Banks, running the potential for some wintry trouble by the time we get to early next week. Now, this will change. I'll go ahead and tell you that now. This forecast is going to shift back and forth and up and down, and that's what I'm going to try to kind of give you a little heads up on today. I'll tell you what trends I think are most likely with this storm, and we'll get there in just a moment. But before we do, let's go ahead and talk about this, because obviously we have some winter weather that's not far away either. For the Northeast, newly issued winter storm watches now into effect for western Massachusetts, back down into the Hudson Valley through New York State. This includes much of Connecticut, northern New Jersey, down areas just to the west there of Philadelphia, and then even into much of Maryland, and just outside of the DC and the Baltimore area under those winter storm watches. So that's going to be round one of snow. That starts really Sunday, and we're already getting the watches for it, so not far away at all as we continue to kind of monitor these threats. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the cold, because obviously to get snow, you need the cold air. So I think this is going to be a very important segment. And you're probably walking outside today and you're thinking, all right, well, it's kind of nice. In Charlotte, we got up into the 50s, really a beautiful day compared to what it has been. However, don't get too excited, because this is tomorrow afternoon's departure from normal in the temperature department here. And you can see that Arctic air mass looming into the plains back out towards the Rockies and slowly going to slide east here as we move it ahead. I'll just go ahead and loop this. This gets us into Sunday morning. We'll pause it here. Here's that big push of Arctic air. The only areas really holding on to nice weather tomorrow probably going to be the Carolinas, into portions of Florida, and even into extreme New England. Then we get to Sunday afternoon. Here we go. Sunday evening, that Arctic air pushes through. And by the time we get to Monday afternoon, pictured here, you can see those very cold temperatures. We're talking 20 to 30 plus degrees below your average. So if your average high is only 40 this time of year, you're going to struggle to even stay in the single digits by the time we get to Monday afternoon. And that continues into Tuesday morning, pictured here. You can see those very cold temperatures continuing. And if I just let this loop ahead, folks, this gets us into next Wednesday. That cold air hangs around by next Thursday here. Still pretty cold, especially into the deep south, and it takes a while for that to moderate. Likely not going to see a warm up until probably the very end of January. I think closer towards the 29th, the 30th, around that time frame, we could flip the pattern back, but that leaves a big window open for very cold temperatures to lock into the eastern half of the country. And we're talking pipe bursting cold in many areas, and again, very far south, areas that are not really built for that level of cold, and that'll be the concern as we go into next week. All right, so let's go ahead and break down this winter weather potential in the Northeast, and it's actually a pretty straightforward setup. There's going to be an area of low pressure that rides up the coast. Now, what's not so straightforward, and my friends in the Northeast will know this, and it never is as easy as you want it to be, how close to the coastline or how far offshore is that low pressure? Do areas along I-95 have mixing concerns, or is it going to be an all-snow event? That's what we still need to figure out, and that's what we'll talk about here below. All right, so what you're seeing, this is Saturday morning, time right above my head. Feel free to look there at any moment. I'll try to verbalize the times as well as I can, as well as we kind of keep on going through this. So the green is rain, the blue is snow, a little bit of a system here Saturday. This is tomorrow morning and afternoon, seeing some of that winter precipitation on the map. Not a big deal. I think a little bit of snow into the interior Northeast, some snow through portions of Ohio, all rain in the south. So this is not the winter storm that you're hearing about. This is just kind of that transition period from the warm air we're seeing now to the cold air that will follow this rain come kind of Sunday and into Monday. All right, so this gets us into overnight. You still see some of that interior Northeast snow, even some snow down into West Virginia potentially with that, and then rain back down towards the Carolinas, Georgia, and the Sunshine State. Now, here we go. Sunday afternoon, you'll notice the map begins to blossom once again with blue indicating that snowfall from West Virginia into Kentucky, portions of the Ohio Valley, including areas like Cincinnati, Columbus, into Charleston, West Virginia, and then up into portions of Pennsylvania. This is our low pressure beginning to develop. Basically, what's happening is you're getting this very cold Arctic air mass to move east, and as that's running into a pretty warm area along the coast due to the warmer water temperatures, it's basically giving the atmosphere a free call to spin. It's saying, all right, here's the ingredients, go ahead and start spinning. And that's what's happening with that low pressure formation, and that's creating enough lift for some winter weather to begin falling here Sunday afternoon. Now, this is not the peak of the storm. What happens is that low pressure rides up the coast here Sunday evening, and notice this big swath of snow. This is by 7 p.m. We've got a big area of snow from Philadelphia through New Jersey, New York City, up into Danbury, into Bridgeport, Connecticut, Providence, and then much of Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and then much of the state of New York. They're seeing that snow fly Sunday evening. Now, I feel pretty confident this is kind of what radar is going to look like. We're going to have a pretty good low pressure, and you get down to 995 millibars or so. That's enough to really create some good lift. It's going to squeeze out as much moisture as possible. That's why some areas could get more than half a foot, maybe up near a foot of snow in some isolated spots out of this storm system. That'll be something I think is a very real possibility. Now, here's the tricky part. Is this a little bit further this way? Is it a little bit further that way? Or is it about where this model is projecting it? That's what we need to figure out. Those are kind of the questions that we're going to try to answer over the next day or so before we get to Sunday and Sunday evening. But you get the idea. A nice little snow event, even getting up into Maine by overnight Sunday. And then this is waking up Monday morning, some leftover flurries on the backside through New England, but beginning to clear on out by the time we get to Monday afternoon and evening, although some lake effect snow does once again ramp back up through Michigan and into the Erie area and then down into the Tug Hill of New York, seeing that lake effect begin to once again make itself known. All right, let's go ahead and talk about totals a little bit. We'll go ahead and start here with the European model. That's what you see below. And this is our total snowfall in Kuchera. If you're wondering what that means, that fancy word, basically this is the models trying to account for potential melting and kind of just trying to get the snow ratio right. So are we going to get big, fat, wet snowflakes that are a little harder to accumulate, or are we going to get that very fine, powdery, dry snow that accumulates better? That's basically what the model is trying to account for here. And the European showing a nice swath of snow between now and Monday, right here from DC to Baltimore, all the way up to Boston. The Euro has that bullseye right along I-95, Philadelphia about 3 inches, New York City around 4 inches, much of Connecticut in that half a foot range. Same story for the higher terrain there of Massachusetts, even Boston in and around 4 inches. Further south, DC, Baltimore, right in that 3 to 4 inch range. So you get the idea. Most of I-95 running a good little thread here of around 3 to 4 inches of snow. That's one model. Now let's show you another model. This is the Icon model. This is the German model, another way to look at it. And you can see higher snowfall totals, but a little bit further inland. And that would be troublesome for our friends along I-95. I know the Snowstar viewers from that area are really hoping that the Euro's a little bit closer, but this is a very real possibility that we'll need to watch for. What about the Canadian model? Canadian model really throws a lot of snow here, and it's even further west. Now, I think this is a little far west. I don't think Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston, and DC, and all of the I-95, I don't think you're going to completely miss out of this. I would be very surprised if a solution like this ends up verifying. Then we can take a look at the GFS American model. Now, this is what you're really hoping for if you're a snow lover along the I-95. This shows a big time winter storm, not just a moderate event, but a big one with half a foot to a foot of snow from DC all the way up to Boston and all points in between. So you get the point here. We've got big potential, but we've also got low potential. And what that tells me is we're still trying to gain confidence. I think confidence has increased that somebody will get big snowfall totals right around that half a foot to a foot range. The question is who gets it. Is it going to be places like Philadelphia, or is it going to be a little bit further inland like Scranton, or maybe areas of western Massachusetts? That is what we'll need to fine tune here. But either way, go ahead and prepare for a nice winter storm somewhere through a nice corridor in and around the I-95 corridor. Now, maybe not right on it, maybe to the west a little bit. That is something we, again, will watch. And I'll keep you up to date as we keep on getting those latest model runs in. All right, so that's storm number one. That'll bring the snow to the northeast. Now, after that, that's when the dangerous cold begins to set in. This is Monday night temperatures, low temperatures by the time you're waking up Tuesday morning. Folks, we're below zero for much of the country here, from Ohio through Indiana up into much of the Great Plains here, from Nebraska into the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and especially into the northern Rockies, feeling that frigid air. But that cold air gets quite far south as well. We've got teens as far south as Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Texas, even portions of the Carolinas, going to probably get down into the low teens by Monday night. Then we get to Tuesday afternoon high temperatures, really not much better here. Take a look at this. We're going to struggle to crack freezing in places like Charlotte, Raleigh, Birmingham, Atlanta, all the way over towards Little Rock into Oklahoma City. Very cold air, and we're not even going to hit 0 degrees up into Minnesota, the Dakotas, sitting in the single digits through the Ohio Valley into much of the Midwest by the time we get to Tuesday afternoon. And what that sets the stage for is the potential of snow very far south. You can see how cold those temperatures are. You can see how far south that cold air is getting. You combine that with some upper level energy, and you're going to run the threat of some winter weather. So let's go ahead and talk about the setup, break it down a little bit, and give you the latest information. So this is the latest GFS model, and I'm going to show you a bunch of models here, but what I want you to note and what I want you to look at is this piece of energy right back in here. I know there's a lot of colors on your map, but you kind of see how these colors begin to jut out a little bit here. Right here, it's almost like it's pointing an arrow or something. Well, this is a trough. Basically, this is an extension of some lower pressure, and troughs are notorious for making storm systems at the surface, kind of firing up low pressure, and that's what is likely to happen here. Now, what makes it tricky is the orientation of the trough. Not every trough makes the same kind of storm, so we kind of have to forecast what is the trough going to look like, how strong is it, what shape is it going to be, all sorts of things that go into the forecast. Now, what you'll notice, this is Monday evening. This is what we call a positively tilted trough, meaning I see kind of the way that it's tilted here one way. Well, just about all of our models have that. This is the GFS of that time frame. This is the Canadian. This is the European. This is the German model. This is even, I can show you another one. This is the NAM model. You get the point. They all have this trough. That's the good news. They all have the energy that we need for a storm. That's step number one in the process. The next step is forecasting how the trough moves from there, and that's where the models begin to disagree. So we'll start with the GFS. This model shows a big winter storm in the deep south, so let's talk about why that is. Here's the upper level map. Here's that trough I showed you, and watch what begins to happen. Once this gets into Texas, folks, the trough begins to tilt. So it's still positive here, and you can tell again just kind of the way it's tilted, but what happens is it begins to become a little bit more neutral, and what that allows for is a lot of energy out ahead of this to begin. That creates a great amount of lift over the Gulf of Mexico, and that combined with, again, this is right along a coastline. That's an area that is generally favorable for low pressure to form. Same thing we talked about earlier with our northeast winter storm this weekend. Same story here, just along the Gulf Coast. So you get a ton of lift out here. Low pressure begins to develop and it wants to ride the coastline, and that's why this model has a big storm. But it all comes back to the shape of this trough. Notice how it becomes to kind of spin up a little bit more here. The energy becomes a little bit more vigorous, and down here, the trough becomes a little bit more neutral in orientation. That tells me it's strengthening, it's creating a lot of lift out ahead of it, and it's creating that big storm system that you're seeing float all around social media. Now, that's one model. What about another model? Let's take a look at the Icon model. The Icon was not nearly as excited about a big winter storm this afternoon, and here's why. Well, let's take a look at the upper level map. What happens here is that energy is just a bit different than the GFS. Let's go back. This is Tuesday afternoon. Notice on the GFS, see how all this kind of vorticity or energy is beginning out ahead of the trough? That tells me it's strengthening, it's creating that lift. If we look at the exact same time on a different model, the Icon, it's not nearly as excited. It's a little bit of a flatter wave. The trough is not quite as amplified. It's not wanting to spin quite as quickly, and because of it, you don't get nearly as big of a storm. So that's the question mark. I think no matter what, we'll get a storm. I think the intensity of that storm is the much bigger question, and you can see that in the models as well. Here's the GFS model run. Again, we saw what its upper level map looked like. Well, what about its actual model output? What does it show? Let's back it up here. Here we go. This is, again, time above my head. This is overnight Monday into Tuesday morning. Snow breaking out from Texas through Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, seeing that snow begin very far south here into New Orleans, seeing snowing over Lake Pontchartrain, and all because this surface low pressure begins to develop thanks to that upper level support and then rides through the Gulf Coast and out over the Atlantic. And because of that, we get big snow in southern Alabama, southern Mississippi, and then a winter storm begins in the Carolinas from Atlanta, Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte, seeing light snow, heavier snow back down to Columbia, into Florence, Orangeburg, back out towards Fayetteville, Lumberton, and then even up into the Raleigh area, seeing good snow out of this model run. This will be Tuesday evening, and that storm cranks up along the coast. We've got a big winter storm at the coast, probably starting as snow, changing to ice with a run like this, and then an all-out, I won't say blizzard, but a big winter storm into southeast Virginia, into the I-95 corridor of North Carolina, down into the PD of South Carolina, getting a big winter storm, and then the storm pulls out to sea. That's one model run. Let's show you the other one. This is the Icon model, so same thing, but a little bit different here. And we're kind of missing some things here, so let's see if we can refresh it. I don't know. We're missing some random information there, but that shouldn't impact us too much. We'll keep going though. Here's the Icon, same storm, same time frame. Let's go ahead and move it ahead here. Here it comes. You see it beginning to develop. This is back near Texas by, let's see, this is Tuesday morning. But then what happens, folks, is nothing. There's really nothing else other than a quick little burst of snow in and around Houston and through other portions of South Texas, all because of the difference in the upper levels. It's meteorology rule 101 when I'm forecasting, or when most people are forecasting, I would assume, is look at the upper levels first and then kind of use that to project how the lower levels are going to react. And the good news for all of you that want snow is a lot more models are closer to that GFS solution, including our European model. Now, the European, I would say somewhere in between the Icon and GFS, but here you go. See that snow breaking out in South Texas into Louisiana, including the New Orleans area, Pascagoula, Mobile, even Pensacola seeing snow by, this would be overnight Tuesday or Tuesday afternoon and evening really. And then you get that big winter storm right along the coastline from Georgia up through the Carolinas. Nice snowstorm from Myrtle Beach, Georgetown, into Beaufort, South Carolina, up through the Outer Banks, even seeing snow, and even a little bit of snow getting into the Delmarva. This would be overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, and then pulls on out of here. So the European's kind of the in-between of the GFS and the Icon. Now let's show you the boom scenario. This is our Canadian model. This is the model that has been the most excited about this storm for quite some time. It has been very consistent, but has shown a little bit of an outlier scenario, one that shows more snow, more ice, and just a stronger storm. All right, here we go. Tuesday morning, you can see everything beginning to go downhill back towards Texas, even Dallas. Getting some winter weather out of this, and then that big shield of snow moves into Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama by the evening of Tuesday, and snow even beginning into the western Carolinas, seeing some of that wintry precipitation beginning to fall from the sky, and then the storm really just explodes along the coastline. We've got just, as I like to say, it's puking snow along the South Carolina coast, down towards Macon, Georgia, Warner Robins, into the Florida Panhandle, seeing a kind of wintry mix between ice and snow, big snow into the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and then kind of scoots up on out of here. So that's kind of the boom scenario. That's the bigger one. Now, a couple notes here is most of the models have this of some sort. You saw the GFS had a storm develop here and kind of ride up the coast. The European had that. The Canadian had that. The Icon had the energy. It just wasn't quite strong enough to get the storm. So I think we're pretty confident at this point we're going to get a storm. I feel pretty good about that. The question is the intensity of the storm and where does the storm go? Now, I will add in here, and I talked about this earlier on, the trends to come. I think it's much less likely we lose the storm. I'd say there's maybe a 10-20% chance that the storm just kind of fizzles out and not much happens. I'd say there's a good 30 to 40% chance that this storm stays about where it's at and we get a big winter storm into the deep south, right into kind of this circled area. There's also another 30-40% chance or so that this trends north just a little bit. Now, I don't think this is going to be a storm that goes all the way up to Tennessee or Kentucky or Arkansas or anything like that, but areas like Charlotte, Greenville, Spartanburg, Atlanta, Birmingham, up into the Triad of North Carolina, this is an area that I think could get a little bit more snow than the models are projecting, and then with that solution, the coastline would get a little bit more ice than the models are projecting, maybe some more sleet than snow, maybe even some freezing rain problems. That's what we'll need to watch. Do we get that trend northwest? It happens all the time. In fact, let's go back to the GFS really quickly and let me show it to you in real time, already kind of happening with this storm. So we'll stop it right on this frame here. Now let's go back a couple runs. All right, so this is a couple runs ago. This is a newer run, a newer run, a newer run, and a newer run, and that's the newest run. So you see the trend. See that trend north? Now, that could just be the GFS playing catch up to the other models. It could also be the start of something, and that's what we'll need to watch for this forecast to maybe blow up a little bit and kind of push further inland. And we see it time and time again. That's why I'm going to go ahead and tell you now it's possible. I'd say that is about as likely as the storm staying where it's at right now in the models. All right, so what are the chances we see good snow out of this? Well, really good if you ask the European ensemble members. I'll tell you, if there's anyone to ask, those are the people. And you can see that here, high snowfall chances. Europeans already just about locked in, saying Houston to New Orleans, gonna get a good snow into the swamps of Louisiana. As crazy as it sounds, the alligators will have the snow falling on them here overnight Tuesday, and then another big swath of snow potential into the deep south from the Outer Banks into the low country of South Carolina, South Georgia, and into the Florida Panhandle, also having good chances between 60 and 80% of at least an inch of snow accumulating. Now, those are big chances. Like I said, though, places like Charlotte, the Triad, into Atlanta, Birmingham, those are areas I would watch for potential uptrend. Could this swing back inland a little bit? I think it's possible. Not a guarantee, but that is something that happens pretty often with these setups, and I think it is something to definitely monitor. Final map I'll show you, same thing, but the GFS, and folks, we're in agreement here. You can see big snowfall chances into Texas, Louisiana, right around that 60-70% mark, and then another blow up into the Outer Banks and into the low country of South Carolina. So I will add here, obviously, I've been drawing my maps kind of like this, so let me do it again. Anyone in this kind of pink area right here that I have circled, I would say is still in the running for snow early next week. Anyone in these two little black circles I draw, I think are at the best chance or the best likelihood for winter weather, especially snowfall in those two areas. But anyone in the pink, keep on watching, keep on tuning in. This could shift more towards you or more away from you. Those black areas, though, that's where we're most confident that we're going to see some winter weather out of this event early next week. And spoiler alert, that might not be the end of it. We could get more storms by the end of next week that try to bring some winter weather. All right, folks, that's all I got for you on this Friday evening. Again, if you haven't, like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. Have a great rest of your night. Stay safe, stay warm. I'll see you all next time.